Ladies and gentlemen, this is huge news. Florida special elections net 2 wins for Republicans. This is very important for a number of reasons. President Trump can now easily impeach lower court judges or federal judges that try desperately to stop and prevent him from implementing his executive branch privileges. Under the Alien Enemies Act, due process does not exist if you can prove that another country is trying to harm U.S. national security. You don't have to be formally at war with another country. Congress has not given a formal declaration of war since World War II. Now, that's another story altogether that people are missing. And they're not understanding that Democrats don't care about the price of eggs or due process or anything of that nature. They only want to disparage Trump. It's their life. It's their reason for existence. They love disparaging and demeaning President Trump. It's their political party. They railroaded Bernie Sanders in 2016. They did even worse to Biden in 2020. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Biden won his primary. They don't even have functioning primaries. They were talking about they were asking why people were so interested in groceries a year ago. Now they're completely hyperventilating, apoplectic as always. But here, the wins bump Republican members in the House to up to 220 compared to Democrats 213. This is a lot better for President Trump to go ahead and impeach federal judges. All you need is a simple majority in Congress. Furthermore, with Democrats saying, my God, look what Trump is doing. Biden under fire for mass deportations under President Obama. This was in 2019. And then you have a little something here. Trump calls for impeachment of judge who tried to halt deportations. But what do we have here? Oh, that's right. AOC calling for the impeachment of Supreme Court justices. And then you'll hear Congresswoman Cortez saying that Biden shouldn't listen and should simply ignore federal judges. Hit subscribe to this channel. I do 2 live streams a day and an upload in the evening. To my members, thank you. If you want to give a super thanks, thank you. Let's get started.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to introduce articles of impeachment against Associate Justices of the Supreme Court Clarence Thomas and Samuel Anthony Alito, Jr. Against Justice Thomas, the resolution includes 3 total articles. 1 count of failure to disclose financial income, gifts, reimbursements, property interest liabilities, and transactions, among other information.
I wonder if the same standard would apply to federal judges. I wonder if the same standard would apply to judges that try to prosecute or did convict President Trump. By the way, that'll be overturned by the Supreme Court. The FEC dropped the case. A state cannot unilaterally decide on an FEC violation, and along with all the other issues. But I'm wondering if the same standards apply. Congresswoman Cortez is accusing the Supreme Court justices, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, of being influenced by a number of factors. Gee, I wonder if federal judges are influenced in that manner.
And 2 counts of refusal to recuse from matters concerning his spouse's legal and financial interests before the court.
So now AOC is looking at the spouses of judges. Interesting. I wonder if the spouses of judges ruling against Trump influence the judges, the federal judges' nationwide injunctions.
The second resolution includes the following impeachment articles against Justice Alito. 1 count of refusal to recuse from cases in which he had a personal bias or prejudice concerning a party before the court, and 1 count of failure to disclose financial incomes, gifts, reimbursements, property interests, among other information. Mr. Speaker, nomination and appointment to the Supreme Court is one of the highest privileges and most consequential responsibilities of our nation.
So I wonder if federal judges can also be impeached under that criteria. Have any of these federal judges openly stated their contempt for Trump or privately stated their contempt for Trump, because apparently everybody from the Atlantic to New York Times, other publications, they actually report on innuendo and hearsay. So, but let's continue. This is AOC stating that they shouldn't even listen to Biden, should ignore lower court rulings and ignore federal judges. Oh, how the Democrats changed their tune. They don't care about the issues. Like, they don't care about what Doge or Musk is doing other than the political power. They don't want their political power taken away from them. That's why they claim to be up in arms and so upset and livid and apoplectic and hyperventilating as always. They're after Tesla because they don't want the grift. They don't want the potential laundering of money. They don't want all the money going to NGOs from USAID to be exposed or discovered. They don't want that gravy train of taxpayer dollars, according to Elon Musk, to end. But this is AOC literally stating what President Trump and Trump supporters have stated for the past couple of weeks.
When you've heard the news this afternoon, a couple hours ago, what did you think?
Well, I think rulings like this, and I think we've seen from the FDA and also from activity in Congress, that some of these rulings, I think we've been preparing and anticipating for there being these egregious overreaches by members of the judiciary.
By the way, this was on X, and this is public record. And this is actually not exactly what President Trump is saying. President Trump has stated numerous times he's following the law. The issue with Democrats is that they don't care about anyone. They don't care about any specific policy other than political power and influence. They wanted to impeach Supreme Court justices a couple years back. They wanted Biden to literally ignore the federal judge's injunction on this pill. And so actually President Trump saying, no, I'm not ignoring any ruling. But AOC is literally stating here that Biden should ignore the ruling. Check this out.
Appointed by a right-wing Republican Party whose goal for a very long time was to just pack these courts with partisan judges, often underqualified or completely unqualified for their role. And so there has been thought, I believe, given to this. Senator Ron Wyden has already issued statements, for example, advising what we should do in a situation like this, which I concur, which is that I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling. I think that the courts have the legitimacy and they rely on the legitimacy of their rulings. And what they are currently doing is engaged in an unprecedented and dramatic erosion of the legitimacy of the courts. It is the justices themselves, through the deeply partisan and unfounded nature of these rulings, that are undermining their own enforcement.
So you're saying the Biden administration should ignore this court, but what does that look like? What does that actually mean?
I think...
And all the hand-wringing and all the pearl-clutching and all the apoplectic prophecies by Democrats today of, this is authoritarianism. This is what a despotic government looks like. The people who say that this is what fascism looks like are so ignorant of history. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. They're so ignorant also of what happened 2 years ago or less than 2 years ago when AOC is literally telling the world that Biden, a Democrat, should ignore federal judges. But listen to this.
The interesting thing when it comes to a ruling is that it relies on enforcement. And it is up to the Biden administration to choose whether or not to enforce such a ruling.
But do we want to live in a world where a government can decide to ignore a federal court ruling?
Of course. I mean, I do think that it raises these important questions. And I do think that when we look at, and there are serious questions that the FDA and the Biden administration is going to have to figure out and how exactly we map this out. But on the other hand, what we are also seeing is it is a power grab over our courts in which the laws passed by Congress and the rules and policies passed by the executive branch now are going to require unanimous consent from 650 district court judges, many of which are appointed.
That is exactly what President Trump is saying. AOC literally stated almost exactly what President Trump is saying regarding these injunctions. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. The two wins this evening allow President Trump and Trump Republicans to impeach judges that perhaps are conflicted in the manner that AOC accuses the Supreme Court justices of being. Thanks so very much. Hit subscribe. Watch for the live streams.